Okay, folks, we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Caron. I am a unit director with the OPG Local. In addition to that, I am the current acting chair of Sisters United. We're glad today to welcome you to this Lunch and Learn presentation. We have a speaker. Her name is Janelle Eisler. She is the manager of community engagement at the Cornerstone Family Violence Prevention Center in Cobourg, Ontario. It's especially important today to remember and take action on this day of National Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. So Janelle is going to go through her presentation, and then we will have some time afterwards for question and answer. If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to use the raise hand option in Zoom, and I will unmute you to ask your question. So again, thank you very much for joining us, and I will turn it over to Janelle to begin her presentation.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, everybody. Just turned into the afternoon. First, I wanted to thank you all for having me today. It's an honor to be here with you, to present to you and to tell you a little bit more about Cornerstone and what we do here. So I am just going to share my screen so that you have the presentation. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. So I am Janelle Eisler, the manager of community engagement here at Cornerstone. I've been with Cornerstone for over 9 years, almost 10 years in March. And I have a background in communications and event management. My passion really lies in connecting with people and engaging with the community. I live in the Durham region, and I work here in Cobourg, and I consider Northumberland County my second home. I've loved every minute of working in this community. I have 2 children and a rescue pup at home, and I enjoy going to the cottage, cooking, and relaxing with a good book. So that's just a very quick recap on me. And again, I've been working with Cornerstone for quite a long time and feel very, very passionate about the issues of gender-based violence and the issues that face women and children that have been impacted by family violence. So the agenda for our presentation today is we'll talk a little bit about Cornerstone, our programs and services. We have a virtual tour that we'll take that takes us through our community resource center as well as our shelter. And that gives you a great view in terms of what, it just gives you an inside look in terms of Cornerstone. And we're very, very proud of our facilities here. So it gives you that chance to take a peek inside. We'll talk about our approach and our services and the issue of gender-based violence as a whole and the impacts, especially that the last 2 years have had in regards to gender-based violence and some of those current trends that we're seeing. And then we'll talk a little bit about looking ahead, what Cornerstone sees in the future for us in terms of our growth. And then there will be question and answer. And again, it's informal. If you do have a question, you can let me know as well. So a little bit about Cornerstone. So our mission at Cornerstone is that we provide a support system that inspires hope and creates safety and resilience while working to end gender-based violence. And our vision here at Cornerstone is we are an actively engaged community committed to a violence-free future. Our values are leadership. We are the voice of change to end gender-based violence in our community. Integrity, we are honest and accountable, and we uphold high standards. Inclusion, we are welcoming and accessible, and everyone is valued and respected. Collaboration, we foster relationships and work collectively for greater impact. And innovation, we embody excellence through a progressive and creative approach to our work. So who we are and how we are funded. We're funded through the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services and the Ministry of the Attorney General. So we are provincially funded here at Cornerstone. And however, our provincial funding is not enough, and it doesn't fund what we know is needed for our clients to thrive. So As with many social services, we do receive funding, but it's not enough to cover our entire budget. So therefore, we rely a lot on fundraising and donations, as well as grants, to help us achieve our funding targets. And at Cornerstone, we work to achieve our mission and vision by connecting with a broad array of stakeholders through various programs to advocate for systemic change that supports the advancement of women and children impacted by violence for a safer, healthier future. I did want to mention, as Rebecca did, that today is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. On December 6th of 1989, 14 women were murdered and 10 others were injured in a violent act of misogyny, which led the government of Canada to declare December 6th the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. So today here at Cornerstone, it's a day that we remember these women and all women that are lost to femicide as we continue this fight against to end gender-based violence. And these are the 14 women that were killed on December 6th of 1989, and we remember them today, as well as the women that we lost throughout this past year and over the years to femicide. So a little bit of the history of Cornerstone. I can take you back to October of 1982, where a group of 5 women here in Cobourg saw a need within our community for a women's helpline for victims of violence. So these women, they got together and they started an answering service around a kitchen table in one of their homes. And on November 25th of 1983, Cornerstone, which was known then as Women in Crisis, was established. So it really was established as a very small grassroots organization that had no funding and was just 5 volunteers around a telephone in a kitchen answering calls of women that were in crisis in our community. And over the past 39 years, Cornerstone has undergone 5 moves. So we have moved 5 different times. We've had 3 name changes, and we've had 1 major capital campaign. So additionally, from the Roundtable Answering Service, Cornerstone now offers 13 different programs and services and has a team of 47 staff and volunteers, and we continue to grow and develop. So you can see here that we went those name changes. We had an expansion on our shelter. We went from being only a shelter to offering community resources, again, to where we are today. And where are we today? Well, now it is time we can take that virtual tour and you can see our programs and services and our shelter from the inside. Okay, so as you can see, our space is, we've tried very hard to create a space where it's very homey and non-institutionalized. I think that a lot of people, they have a preconceived notion as to what a shelter might look like in terms of a women's shelter. And we've tried very hard to make it as warm and as inviting as we can. And I think that that has shown through some of those testimonials from our past clients. So we do have a 10-room, 21-bed shelter. As well as the other side of our building, as I kind of touched on with our expansion, we have a community resource center. So we did start out as just a shelter for many, many years, and then realized that there were a lot of women and children in our community that didn't necessarily need somewhere to stay, but they still needed the resources of counseling and those resources that we provide. And so we created the Community Resource Center where we can offer that to women and children that are living in the community that don't necessarily need shelter. So our client-centered approach and harm reduction. So client-centered approach, we promote individual autonomy, rights, voice, and self-determination in their plan and recovery process. Harm reduction, we seek to reduce the health and social harms associated with addiction and substance use without necessarily requiring people who use substances from abstaining or stopping to utilize our services. Motivational interviewing, which is a collaborative, goal-oriented style of communication with particular attention to the language of change, and comprehensive, continuous, integrated system of care. And this promotes consistent approaches to work with individuals with co-occurring psychiatric and substance issues. As you can imagine, many women and children that come to us have varying degrees of trauma. So we also have a trauma-informed approach grounded in the understanding of and responsiveness to the impact of trauma that emphasizes safety for both providers and survivors, and creates opportunity for survivors to rebuild a sense of control and empowerment in intimate partner violence as well. So our services, like I said, we have our shelter, and in our shelter, we have our crisis line and Cornerstone Connect. So what that is we have a 24-hour crisis line that is answered. It's a 1-800 number. So anyone from anywhere can call and they can receive a residential counselor on the other end of that phone call that will help them get through whatever situation they're calling us from, or help them safety plan, or let them know if we do have room available here at the shelter. And then Cornerstone Connect. So what that is during COVID, we had to be very creative in terms of how can we reach women and children that are sheltered at home with their abuser that can't necessarily make a phone call because they can't use a telephone. So Cornerstone Connect is a 24-hour online chat. So it can be accessed from any online portal right through our website. So it can be, it's a text chat connection. So it doesn't require somebody to actually make that phone call and speak on the phone. We offer case management. We support individuals with complex needs, support all shelter residents with housing process. And then we have our child and youth services and shelter. So we have counseling services as well as programming and childcare for the children and youth that are staying with us as well. And then again, we have our community services, which is counseling for women and children, family court support. So this is one of the programs that's funded by the Ministry of the Attorney General. And this provides information about family court and support through the process. As you can imagine, that can be a very daunting process for anyone to go through, let alone somebody who has probably significant amounts of trauma, and it can be very intimidating. So we have a counselor, a dedicated counselor that's here to support women through that process. And actually that's one of the only programs here that we can offer men as well to support them through that process. We also offer case management and community services as well, which provides support to community clients with complex needs. And we have our prevention programming, which we just relaunched our school-based youth prevention program for both elementary and high school students. And these programs are geared to their respective audience to help mitigate future violence. So the issue of gender-based violence is growing. I'm sure that most of you have read, especially through COVID-19. It was kind of a pandemic within a pandemic, and the stats have just been increasingly alarming. So organizations like Cornerstone are necessary services to ensure the safety and well-being of women and girls in Canada. We know that women and girls die at a higher rate than men at the hands of their intimate partner. And approximately every 6 days, a woman in Canada is killed by her intimate partner. More than 4 in 10 women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. And we are seeing a rise in the number of women and girls that are being killed by violence in Canada wide. In 2020, 160 women and girls were killed by violence, and that number rose to 173 in 2021. And so the rise of violence against women is not stopping. In fact, it's rising. So the COVID impact on violence against women, like I said, it's been known now as the shadow pandemic. COVID created an opportunistic environment to thrive. It created stress with uncertainty, stress with job loss, financial strain, and housing pressures. And furthermore, it eliminated privacy and creating significant barriers and trapping women and children more than ever before. And rates of gender-based violence rose globally by 18%. We saw an increase in our services. At first, actually, when the pandemic first happened, our lines went completely dead. Nobody was reaching out, and we knew that these women and children were out there because our statistics showed, for years we operated over capacity. We were very full, and then all of a sudden the lines went dead. And when we looked back, we had a lot of calls of women saying they thought that it was illegal for them to leave their home, because when the government said everybody needs to shelter in place, it was assumed that that sheltering at home was a safe place to be. And for many women and children, it was not. And so when we looked at our most utilized services from 2018 to 2021, we could see that COVID-19, the impact that it played in our organization. Our shelter services saw a rise in resident admission. And we were operating at over 100% occupancy rate. Our community counseling needs have steadily increased and skyrocketed in 2020 as the need for support was increasing and stay-at-home orders were fluctuating. And our family court services saw a dip in individual support in 2020 because the courts shut down. And so that was really unfortunate. And our 24/7 support line saw a steady increase in calls between 2018 to now. So we've seen that this has really had an impact on us. So the COVID impact, COVID-19 meant that we had to shift our services that we provided, obviously. This looked like ceasing in-person services and limiting our residential shelter intakes. And for the first time in 13 years, we were operating at below 100% occupancy rate, like I said, but that was because we were set up as a communal living center, and we weren't necessarily set up for social distancing. So we tried to make the best of things, and we implemented the digital aspect to our support line. Like I said, that Cornerstone Connect line, we implemented that quite quickly. And we also applied very quickly for a grant through Ontario Trillium Foundation to renovate our shelter so that we could quickly open up those beds again. And be able to provide the services that we did. So we underwent a pretty extensive renovation in terms of the inside of our shelter. And we were quite quickly, actually, thank goodness, able to provide more shelter within a few months of the pandemic, really creating those harder conditions in shelter. So looking ahead, as I said, we want to discuss kind of where does Cornerstone see us going, because we've been steadily growing over the last almost 40 years now. Where do we see ourselves going in the future? And really it's expansion, education, and endowment. The needs in our community change and grow, and so we are committed to being adaptable and responding. So currently we're maxed out in our footprint for shelter and resource centers. So where we're located in Cobourg, we can't expand to be able to offer more beds, which is and offer more programming, which is what we're seeing. I mean, we are full all the time. It's one of the questions that we get. And so we are, we're sharing offices for our programming staff. We're sharing offices. We can't expand on the number of shelter beds that we are able to provide. So we're looking at hopefully being able to provide self-contained units in the future. One of the biggest crises that's happening in our community, in our country, is the lack of safe and affordable housing. So we're seeing women and children stay with us for longer periods of time because there isn't safe and affordable housing for them to go. So ideally, our future will be able to provide these self-contained units somewhere within our community, and be able to house clients a little bit longer so that they have that time to find sustainable, safe, and affordable housing. As well as our education, as I touched on, we are just relaunching our prevention program in the schools, which is a youth violence prevention program. It's offered from grades 5 all the way up to grade 10, and it has significant impact on breaking the cycle of family violence. Unfortunately, this program is not funded at all. So we do rely heavily on fundraised dollars to be able to provide this programming in the schools. And it's very, very popular and it's growing. And we want to keep up with that. We want to get into as many schools as possible. And so with that, we've created an endowment fund. And this endowment fund is very new to Cornerstone as we are building our financial future. And this will create more sustainable funding for programs such as our prevention program in the schools from this year forward. And we are coming into our last slide. So how you can get in touch with us. And so that's our website, and you can follow us on social media. You can call us. My email is on the bottom there if you have any other questions that you aren't able to ask today now that the presentation is over, or you could think of something in the coming days, or you want to get in touch with us in terms of having a presentation or making a donation or volunteering. These are the ways to get a hold of us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And that's it for my presentation, but I'm open to any questions that you may have on Cornerstone and our programs.
Are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised. If you would like to ask a question, just pop your hand up. Okay. Leon. Okay, Leon, I've asked you to unmute.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so my question is, I'm really appalled at the stats that you had given. Every 6 days a woman is killed by intimate partners. I just wanted to know, do you have any breakdown on, I know that Indigenous women face, much more rates of violence. Any breakdown on that? And are there Indigenous communities where you're at?
So I don't have the exact stats on Indigenous women, but it is a well-known fact that unfortunately rates of violence and femicide are much higher for Indigenous women in our nation, especially Indigenous women, women of color, and women that identify as LGBTQ2+. And so those rates of violence definitely increase for those women. And we do have an Indigenous community close by. They also have a shelter in their community that we work very closely with.
Thank you. Okay, Anna.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, especially with COVID and everybody being home and everybody listening to music and you know, parents not being really able to ever supervise what their kids are listening to. There's a proliferation right now with really misogynistic lyrics and I don't know how you could incorporate anything like that in your educational piece when you're talking to younger people in the school system. Like I know my kids are teens and they listen to things I'm just aghast at. And even though I've always tried to personally talk to them and teach them about lyrics and what they mean, you know, these songs are powerful, very popular artists. The melodies, the music is actually amazing, and they just suck you in. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you do on the education front to address that, because COVID, of course, and the lockdown is one thing, but kids are listening to this stuff all day long. So that was one part of my question. And then the other one is, what happens when somebody who is desperate comes to you and there's no housing? What happens with them? So two questions.
Sure. So Anna, thank you for those questions. Both great questions. So I'll touch on the first question in terms of the misogyny and in song lyrics and in the media as a whole. I think it definitely is talked about in our education program. So we developed that program with a sister shelter called Family Transition Place in Orangeville. And we update it every year. So we keep it as current as possible. And it's definitely something that's talked about in terms of not necessarily just with song lyrics, but in the media as a whole, social media, that creates an entirely different level of bullying and misogyny and a place where violence can thrive, unfortunately. So we touch on that in each one of our programs appropriately. So with our grade 5s, we talk a lot about empathy, but we talk about, you know, what that looks like in television shows and movies, and we have some clips, and we incorporate media in all of our education programs because it is such a big influence on our youth. So we do talk about not allowing that to influence our views and how to handle that. And then in terms of when women and children come to us and we're full, unfortunately, this happens more often than we would like. Last year, I believe we had to turn away over 70 women and over 40 children that needed shelter. But when I say that we turn them away because our shelter is full, we'll never just, you know, close the door and say, I'm sorry, we can't have you in. We'll always bring them in the doors. We will have them come in, give them something warm to eat. If we need to, if it's in the middle of the night, then, you know, there have been times where we've set up cots in the living room or in an office. We'll always bring them in and make sure that they have a safe place to stay for at least that night. And then we'll utilize every resource possible to find them somewhere to go. And whether that is a shelter in a surrounding area, or whether that's maybe they have family and friends that they can stay with, but they have left without their car, or they don't have transportation, we'll provide that safe transportation for them. But we'll definitely always use as many resources as possible to find them somewhere safe to go. But in terms of housing, once they are in shelter, that's why we're seeing such long lengths of stay, because there really isn't a lot. There's not a lot here in this community. There's not a lot anywhere for safe and affordable housing. So it really is a crisis.
So one of the things I was wondering, you know, like there are so many dogs that are abandoned, but there are foster parents. Like, is there a network of homes that could make themselves available to help address a short-term need? Appreciating there's so many levels of safety that would be required, but where people would volunteer, and they could be from a different community nearby or whatever, that that privacy and safety could be met, but where people could just open their homes to help people get out.
It's something that we have been looking into. There was a pilot project that happened actually out east called Home Share, and it was exactly that. And actually it was, you know, it was mostly people that were living on their own that had, you know, a 5-bedroom home, and there was either 2 of them or 1 of them living there, and they were able to offer up that space, and it was quite successful. So it's something that we are looking into in terms of having to be creative to be able to house people, for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. Susan, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is more on donations. I know financial donations are always required, but years ago, I used to do some volunteer work with a shelter, and when women leave and children leave, they often leave with just the clothes on their back. So as far as donations go, I'm always talking to friends about, you know, we have kids leaving home and we're always cleaning out closets, and where do you take this stuff that's, you know, good clothing, but do you take other donations other than financial? And if you do, what's the avenue to get it to you?
We do take donations. However, we've had to stop taking used clothing donations only because of our lack of space. So as I was saying in the presentation, we have maxed out every square inch of our building to be able to provide programs and services. So we don't have any storage left. So over the COVID, when we couldn't take donations, we got, again, very creative, and we have a thrift store that is literally the street over that accepts the donations for us, and they allow our clients to go and access their thrift store free of charge. So they're able to go and access all of the donations there. So it helped us to be able to provide more to them because they were able to take more stuff than we could take because of our lack of space. And we do take furniture donations. We have a small storage space that we're able to take some furniture donations and able to so that we're able to provide some of that as women and children are leaving our services and going into their new homes. And so we accept those kind of on an as needed basis, again, just because of our lack of storage. But we also accept donations of unused items such as like shampoo, conditioner. We are always in need of toiletry items, unperishable food items, definitely. And we actually have a wish list of items that's on our website. So you can go to our website and see exactly what we do accept here at Cornerstone.
Okay. And your address for dropping anything off that
Yes.
is on your list is there as well?
Yeah, so that's on our website.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
There is a question. Mary, is that you? I think you have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Just 2 questions, and I did hear a brief reference to it, but one, I was wondering if there is a maximum length of stay. And the second question I had is, does your shelter have transitional housing? Is that something that you're hoping? So this isn't necessarily permanent housing, but, you know, sort of when people need less support than when they first get to a shelter. Or is that an idea that's, you know, being developed or thought about? I was just curious about that.
Yes. So the first question was, again, I apologize.
Maximum length of stay?
Maximum length of stay. That's right. So we actually don't have a maximum length of stay. We're unique that way because, well, as I touched on, the affordable housing situation. So we could have women stay with us sometimes, you know, three days, and then they are able to find somewhere to go, whether that's with family or friends, or they have secured housing, which is always wonderful. That's kind of always the end goal. Or we've had women and children stay with us upwards of a year. The reason we don't have a maximum length of stay is because the housing is so unpredictable. And the last thing we want to do is say, okay, you have 3 weeks and that's it. well, then where do they go? The likelihood of them returning to where they came from is high because there isn't somewhere for them to go. So we work really hard in terms of trying to find them a safe and affordable place to stay after they leave here. So that's why we don't have a maximum length of stay. And that's why we're seeing longer periods of people staying with us. I would say on average, and it's hard to make an average, but on average, we're seeing probably 3 to 6 months of people staying with us for those periods of time. In terms of transitional housing, so that definitely is the goal. When I spoke about expansion to self-contained units, the goal would be that those would be similar to transitional housing. So women and children, when they don't need to be on site, when they are in that high crisis situation and they need that transitional housing, that would be what those self-contained units would be for. And they could go, they would have their independence, they would be able to thrive in that environment while waiting for more consistent and secured housing within the community that they're living in. So that definitely is the goal. It's just being able to fund it and get the fundraised dollars in and the sustainable funding to sustain that for years to come.
Sorry, I'm talking and I'm on mute. So I have 2 questions in the chat. The first one is, can you tell us a bit more about the 5 ladies that started out in their kitchen?
I can. We are fortunate that we still have a connection with some of them. Unfortunately, 2 of them have one recently passed and another one passed away a number of years ago. But we do have a connection with the other 3 ladies. They've gone on to different careers. And we actually had, we went an HR review, and the lady that we hired as the consultant was one of the 5 founding members. She had gone on to become an HR consultant. So it was really, really cool to have her back, and because she knew our organization and, well, the core of it and the heart of it. So these 5 ladies, they were relatively young. They were in their late 20s, early 30s when they started it. And again, they saw a need in this community for women such as themselves, and they did it as a volunteer. They had other careers. They weren't paid, and they did it, in the evenings off the kitchen table. And eventually it grew, and eventually they got more funding. They were able to secure a building, and then it grew into what we are today. But we have stayed connected with these women. One of them working at our local hospital here. Another one, as I said, an HR representative, and another one living within the county still. So it's pretty neat that we have that connection with them still.
That's awesome. And the final question in the chat, do you offer any courses or programs about family violence prevention for those people who are not in crisis?
We do. So we have training. We have the ability to go out and give presentations like this, or we have kind of one-off trainings for workplaces that we can do. Like I said, we have our prevention program in the schools, but we've worked really closely with different organizations in the community where we can provide that training. We work really closely with our local police agency, Cobourg Police Services. And we cross-train with our police officers here, being able to provide them with more training on dealing with domestic violence calls. We have a really great relationship with them. So we have all sorts of different training that we can provide.
Awesome. Okay. So final call for any other questions. I don't see any other hands up. Actually, here we go. Josh, I'm going to unmute you if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, great, thanks. Well, I'm not located anywhere near you, but just wondering if organizations like yours offer any sort of opportunities for people to volunteer to help out with a center like this in any capacity?
Absolutely. I know from we have a network of different shelters across Ontario that we are involved with. And I know that most of them all accept volunteers, and it will vary in terms of the shelter, what they are allowing in terms of on-site volunteering, but there's always different ways to volunteer through community advocacy. And I would encourage you, not knowing where you are located, but I would encourage you to reach out to your local shelter and say you're looking to volunteer. And I'm sure that they would, I know that we always sit down, have a conversation and see if we can come up with something, because volunteers are what help us run our programs and services. So I would encourage you to reach out.
Oh, okay, great. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm up in Thunder Bay.
Yeah, and you can maybe find on if on Google search or on the OAITH website. So it's OAITH.ca. They have a list of all the shelters in Ontario. So you could probably find out there what your local shelter would be.
Okay, next question, last name Chapman.
Yep, hi, I'm Kathy.
Hi, Kathy.
I wondered, I don't know how much you can answer without giving away all your secrets, if they're secrets, but how do you keep the women and the children that are staying there safe if their their violent partner shows up and do you, if it's planned, do you let them in? Like how do you let them talk or whatever? I'm just curious about both of those questions.
So definitely we don't let them in. That is not something that we provide here. In terms of like a mediation type talk, that's not a service that we provide here. Only because of safety concerns. We don't have, we have a wonderful relationship, like I said, with our local police service, which we're very lucky where we're located. They are literally like around the corner, and they are here within 2 minutes of us hitting our panic button. And we have state-of-the-art security. So our shelter is actually, all of the doors are double locked doors that can't be accessed unless we unlock them from the inside. We have video surveillance on site. We have all bulletproof glass, shatterproof glass. And so if we were to look out in the parking lot, see somebody that we're not sure who it is, I've never seen the car, we would just call the police right away, and we don't hesitate to do that. And because of the women that we do see are at very high risk of, we have a risk assessment that we do, and most of them are high risk. We wouldn't invite their partner onto the premises. That would have to be done through a different service that we don't provide here.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there last call for questions. Oh, Anna, you got your hand up. Hold on. We'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi. I guess the last thing is there may be a stereotype too, just that if a woman is in need, she may be, from a particular income bracket, as an example. So regardless of economic status, how do you get the message out for people in need that there should be no shame in reaching out? Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I found is women are afraid sometimes and very ashamed to tell family and friends. That would be the last place that they would ever go to look for help. And but reaching out to a shelter may seem even worse if they're so proud or ashamed of their situation. So how do you get How do you get that message out to people?
I think it's all through public awareness. We invest a lot in our public awareness campaigns, as well as I think it's doing as many presentations like this as possible, where you're getting in front of a wide variety of people that come from all socioeconomic backgrounds. And I think it's just getting the word out there that we're here, that we are here to help, that they can call, if they're not ready to leave home, that can happen quite often, but we're here to safety plan if that's the case, that we are here in a non-judgmental facility. And it's just really is public awareness and having people get to know Cornerstone, having people get to see our facilities. I think, you know, if there was a woman at one of these presentations that sees the virtual tour, I think it would ease their mind a little bit in terms of what to expect when they are coming to Cornerstone. And everything is confidential. Like our confidentiality is of utmost importance. And obviously the privacy of all of our clients is of utmost importance as well. Does that answer your question?
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, Janelle, I want to thank you so much on behalf of Sisters United and the Society of United Professionals for your time today. It was an amazing presentation, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing in our communities. And if there's ever a way that we can help, we certainly know where to go to and how to get to you. So thank you again. Anyone else have any final thoughts or comments?
Well, thank you guys very much for having me. It was such a pleasure to speak with you today, and it was an honor, especially on today, to share this information with you. So thank you very much.
So just before you go, Janelle, on behalf of the Society of United Professionals, we're going to be donating $1,000 to Cornerstone today.
Wow, that's
thank
incredible.
You very
that's
much
incredible.
For your
thank you.
Presentation, and we look forward to continuing relationships to support you in our communities.
Thank you. That's very generous and unexpected. So thank you very much.